All right, here we are on another beautiful South Florida afternoon. Tom Trento, your host. Enemies of the State at 5 minutes, actually about 6 minutes after 4 o'clock on this beautiful Thursday, December number 4. 21 days, folks, left to Christmas. WSBR AM radio broadcasting from Miami all the way up to Palm Beach, out to the Everglades, and all the way to the ocean. All you people on the boats listening out there. Plus, we're on theunitedwest.org. You can watch the show there. We actually produce a television show, simulcast on Beasley Broadcasting in Boca Raton. Also, you could watch on Breitbart TV. We put parts of the show there. Tea Party Community. Good to have you here on a very important day. We are discussing today, as you can see behind me, a movie called Silent Conquest, which addresses the issues of the end of free speech in the West. And let me tell you, if that were the case, we'd have serious problems in this studio right here, because in the context of our show, Enemies of the State, we speak a bit aggressively about the leftist policies in the West, in the United States. We're not friendly with the administration that occupies 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. We speak pretty aggressively against President Obama's socialistic, neo-Marxist, anti-colonial, neo-colonialistic policies that are ruining this country. You know that, folks. We stand for the state of Israel. People don't like when we speak that way. We fight against Islamic Jihad and ideologically the system of Islam. And we're here just presenting good stuff. In fact, we have serious problems with the system of Islam, and we make a distinction between a Muslim who is a human being and me as an evangelical Christian. Not only an obligation, but a desire to love all human beings. That does not mean I got to love a religious or philosophical system. I don't even agree with relatives about some of their religious or philosophical beliefs. So who's to tell me why I can't talk about Islam as a system that has failed? It has failed in geopolitically. It has failed spiritually. It's failed in many, many ways. Right, guys?
Right.
What are you talking about?
Imam Abdullah, what is the problem with what I'm saying?
I think you're completely wrong.
Well,
I do not appreciate. In fact, you have offended my Muslim sensibilities and sensitivities.
Oh, well,
we're not in Canada. We're not in Canada.
Well, excuse me if I've offended your Muslim sensibilities. I respect you as an individual. I don't have to respect your belief system, at least until we apply the laws of Canada to the United States.
Exactly.
Or the laws of the United Nations.
Either of those. Well, we're going to get into all of those. Yeah. But right now, if indeed this show were being broadcast in our brothers and sisters to the north in Canada,
that's right.
We would have some serious problems.
We'd have serious problems.
And to illustrate that very dynamically and very directly and very graphically, we have someone who has been through many of these lawfare battles, who wears the scars of being a target of those who don't like what he says, who wears the scars of being a target of those who disagree with his viewpoint, and in fact, currently in this battle for free speech in the West, just lost once again. Please, ladies and gentlemen, give a rousing round of applause to Ezra Levant from our neighbors up north in Canada. Ezra, how you doing?
How you doing?
Well, I'm okay. I mean, they haven't literally gagged me, but we live in a country here in Canada that does not have your First Amendment. We don't have the same vigorous culture of freedom of speech and freedom of religion. So literally for 8 years now, I have been battling some form of censorship or another. Back in 2006, I published the Danish cartoons of the Muslim prophet Muhammad in a magazine. Well, that put me through a 900-day investigation and prosecution at the hands of a government human rights commission for, quote, promoting hatred or contempt against Islam, just for writing a news story with those images. And last week, I regret to say, I lost an $80,000 defamation case brought by the former president of, the youth president of the Canadian Islamic Congress. So I have spent the better part of 10 years fighting for free speech in a country that doesn't value it as much as America does.
And folks, here on WSBR Radio, AM on your dial 740, Tom Trento, your host, our special guest, two special guests today. Right now we have Ezra Levant on, and he is not only academically qualified to be a writer, a speaker, a publisher, a journalist. He's a distinguished attorney. He happens to be living in a country. Ezra, you really don't have a First Amendment or any sort of protections of free speech in that manner?
Well, we do have in our Constitution a protection for freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of association, freedom of religion, but it is not given the same strength in the law as your First Amendment gives you. And listen, the law is just a piece of paper. It's the living culture every day that gives life to that law. So first of all, our freedom of expression is not protected as vigorously as yours is in our Constitution. And we don't have the same bipartisan love for free speech. Now, I'm not saying that liberals love free speech as much as conservatives do. I think recently they've lost some of that. But I must give credit even to groups like the ACLU. They still do go to bat for free speech. It's that 60s ethos of free speech that is still strong. Even Noam Chomsky, for example. I mean, the fact that the ACLU would send a black attorney to defend a KKK member, that shows that even the American left gets it. I don't think Canadians have that same deep passion. So between our weaker Constitution, our weaker culture, and judges who aren't passionate about it, we're less free than you are. And I love Canada very much. I want to do my best to improve it. But if you're not even allowed to speak truth to power, not even allowed to publish cartoons, I think that we have a lot more fighting to do up here.
Yeah, and these are serious issues, folks. Our big idea today is that free speech certainly is not free anymore in Europe. We've recognized that with our good friend Geert Wilders over there. And you're hearing today firsthand from someone who's been through these battles for 10 years. You've been in how many lawsuits? And the target of these lawfare. Lawfare is fighting an ideological and a information war by using the legal process to basically bankrupt somebody, folks. How many of these battles have you been in over the past 10 years, Ezra?
I've literally lost count. I had 2 Human Rights Commission complaints against me. I have more than a half a dozen civil lawsuits. I'm also on TV, so there's our version of the FCC. We call it the CRTC up here. There are so many, and then I'm a lawyer, so the Law Society has its own, processes. It all told, between all these different ways that people can try and gag me, I've probably been hit 50 times. Now, almost all of them have been dismissed, but even if 1 in 10 gets through, like last week, I lost a lawsuit. Let me just give you a little detail about that.
Yeah, tell us about that.
The former youth president of the Canadian Islamic Congress sued me for a number of reasons, one of which was I called him anti-Semitic. Now,
you called him anti-Semitic? Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And
wow, that's a big, so what? But go ahead.
Well, the Canadian Islamic Congress, they publicly call for the legalization of terrorist groups, Hamas and Hezbollah. Their leader, their former leader, went on national TV and said any adult in Israel is fair game for a terrorist attack. I mean, these people are extremists, in my view. This guy was the youth president who never said a word to contradict it. So based on this group's public statements and identity, and this guy being the youth president, I said he was anti-Semitic. The judge said that is not a fact. And so that's one of the various reasons I have to pay him $80,000 plus cost. So I have to appeal, because imagine if anyone who used the word anti-Semite as a description of a Muslim supremacist, or I'm not speaking about this guy, I'm speaking about in 100 other cases. Imagine if, as soon as you called someone an anti-Semite because they were part of an anti-Semitic organization, imagine if you would be sued, dragged through court for 5 years, and punished with a huge fine. It would chill the debate. Now, your First Amendment would likely mean that wouldn't happen. I've just lived through it. If people want to read, I recommend your viewers read the whole case. It's quite an eye-opener for Americans. You can find it on my website. Do you mind if I mention?
No, we want you to mention your website, and we want you to make an appeal for funds, you know, to help raise money for your defense. We understand. We've been in a few of these battles. We understand it costs money. So how can the folks reach you at 16 minutes after 4 o'clock, WSBR? Tom Trento, your host here on the 4th of December, Thursday. Ezra Levant, how could they reach you?
Well, I've set up a website called standwithezra.com, and Ezra is just my name, E-Z-R-A. So standwithezra.com, and you can read the entire court decision yourself. So maybe you agree that I did something wrong, given the cut of your jib, that you're Americans who love freedom and free speech, and you're worried about Islamic extremism. I think you might side with me. Well, I just got hit with an $80,000 penalty, a liability, plus to appeal. My lawyers estimate it's going to cost me $30,000 to appeal, and I've got to pay that up front. So, I mean, listen, that's the price of free expression in a country without the First Amendment. But actually, the price is far worse, because I'm paying that price. But the vast majority of Canadians, they say, yeah, I don't even want to pay that price, so they self-censor. Not everyone is built for fighting. Tom, you're built for fighting. I know you are, and you enjoy the cut and thrust. Most people prefer a quiet life that is conflict averse. I'm like you a little bit, Tom. I like to fight and speak my mind. So I'm incurring these costs, not just of money, but time and stress. This is a danger if this spreads into the United States, and that's why you've got to be on guard for your Bill of Rights.
Yeah, absolutely. And the fight you're talking about, I was cursed at a young age of having, as a little kid, this sense of justice. Claire, I'm going to come to you in a minute if you have any questions for Ezra, because we only have him for a short time. As a little kid in athletic events, I was always a pretty good little athlete. I'd be picked, as one of the first guys, and I'd watch the team, the disparity in the selection, and I would put myself always on the underdog side. It was way later in life when I realized God had formed me to fight these battles of truth, justice, and the Western way. And it's a curse in a sense, but along with that is a like. You're right. There is a like to the fight, because you're fighting for the right thing. That's what's important. And for every viewer out there watching us today, or every listener, we are arguing and fighting so that you don't have to do this stuff. You can go about your life, but if you want to say something, the thought police, the word police aren't going to come and shut you down or sue you because your neighbor, who may be a Muslim, who doesn't like the fact that you said something about Islam. That's true. We're fighting for those issues, those reasons. Ezra's on the front lines. We want you to go to standwithezra.com, read the case, donate if you can, help him out. There's two issues we're dealing with today. One, the larger issue of Ann Fishman's phenomenal movie, a 2-hour documentary with some of the world's top free speech advocates. She has everybody in this. One of her featured stars is Clare Lopez, who is with us. Do we have Claire ready yet?
Yes, we do. Hold on a second.
Okay, we're going to bring Claire in for a second. We're going to look at the larger issue, the OIC, Organization of Islamic Cooperation, their Istanbul process. All new words maybe to some of you out there, but words that impact your life on an everyday basis. We're going to look at Benghazi and how Hillary Clinton used exactly what happened to Ezra to suppress free speech in the West, to capitulate to Islamic supremacism, Islamic jihad. Claire, how are you today?
Glad to be on today with you all, and even though I was not able to hear Ezra, want to say hello, and very glad to be on sharing the program with him too.
All right, you didn't hear him, but you know his background, you know his story. What strikes you about this recent case with him, where he called what's the gentleman's name, the youth president?
His name is Khurram Awan, and he's the former youth president of the Canadian Islamic Congress. And I said various things about him. One was calling him an anti-Semite, and the judge said I was not allowed to do that as a statement of fact based on his affiliation with an anti-Semitic group, which I find very puzzling. That would be like saying if someone was a member of the KKK You couldn't call him a racist as a fact just because he was a member of the KKK.
Did you hear that, Claire?
Yes, now I can hear. It's loud. It's good.
All right. What are your initial thoughts on that situation?
Well, I mean, it's absolutely insane, of course. And all I can say is that we have to be tremendously grateful to our founding fathers for having given up the First Amendment and indeed our entire Constitution. But, you know, without that, and it is under assault, we will be in the same situation as Ezra is up there in Canada.
Yeah, and the situation's getting worse. And a lot of this goes back to 2005 when Jyllands Posten, the Danish newspaper, wanted to, I think the facts are, they wanted to put together a book, a child's book or something on Islam, and they couldn't get people to draw pictures. Then they saw that there was ana-iconic issues with Islam. Ana-iconic, A-N-I-C-O-N-I-C, ana-iconic, which means icon is a Greek word for image. Whenever you put an A, I happen to know Greek, whenever you put an A, alpha, before a Greek word, you negate it. Ana-iconic means no icons, no images. Islam is one of these world religions that does not allow iconography, any sort of image. So the editors at the Danish newspaper put out a word and said, does anybody want to draw pictures of Muhammad the Prophet as they understand him? Not a wild request, not a crazy thing. And Claire, you were one of the people in Ann Fishman's Silent Conquest. What happened? Go through very quickly what happened with the Danish cartoon controversy back in 2005, 2006, going into 2008.
This the daily newspaper, the Jyllands Posten, solicited these images, which they received several of them. And honestly, by the standards of anything that you'll see on the daily newspapers of Middle East newspapers on any day of the week and every day of the week, these were very mild images of Muhammad, and they were published. And you know, the response out of the Muslim world was outrage and violence. And here's a point that we need to make right here, which is that, be it as it may, that Islam might doctrinally be ana-iconic, and that's fine. They can do whatever they want. But the problem is when an ideology like Sharia, the law of Islam, takes it on itself to demand that the entire world abide by its own rule. Laws. The Islamic supremacism of Islamic law is the problem. Not that the Muslims themselves don't draw pictures of Muhammad, but that they demand on penalty of violence that no one else do so either.
I kill you.
And then that was Imam Abdullah in our studio. Oh, by the way, Ezra, we have a Pakistani Taliban Imam in our studio. Why don't you say hello to Ezra?
Hello, infidel, Islamophobe.
You know, even making jokes like that, I got to tell you, in Canada, there has been a case of a comedian who was prosecuted in the British Columbia Human Rights Tribunal. I'm not joking that even jokes in Canada can have you hauled before a government agency. And I know you think I'm probably exaggerating, but it is true. And even Mark Steyn, who sometimes guest hosts for Rush Limbaugh, so he's known to a lot of Americans, Mark Steyn's humor was put to court in one of these human rights commissions in British Columbia. So even a joke, a lighthearted joke, even making an accent in a humorous way could get you prosecuted. You may think I'm exaggerating. I promise you that the wording of our laws is so vague. And let me just tell you the wording of the law. I know it off by heart because I was prosecuted under it for the Danish cartoons myself. It is against the law to publish anything, quote, likely to expose a person to hatred or contempt, unquote. So those are emotions. Anything that's likely to cause an emotional reaction is against the law in 3 Canadian provinces.
You can get a business, Trento.
Well, actually, we have
I'm canceling my my Christmas trip to Niagara Falls, man. Are you kidding me?
We actually have the footage where he's actually called. I mean, he actually published a YouTube live as he was being hauled in
Ezra.
to. Yeah, Ezra.
Do we have it now, or we're going to put it in?
Oh, we have it now. If you want to put it up.
Let's run it. Ezra, we're going to run the piece where you videotaped your own interrogation. What was that all about?
Well, this was for publishing those Danish cartoons. So this interrogation was a few years ago now. I mentioned I've been fighting these fights since 2006. In 2008, I was summoned by a government agency called the Alberta Human Rights Commission to answer for that charge I just read out for publishing the cartoons. Now, I didn't even write the thing. I'm the publisher of the magazine. We showed the cartoons as an exhibit, like a photo to the news story, but I was seriously prosecuted for 900 days. I took a video camera into my own interrogation because I knew no one would believe how Kafkaesque it was if I didn't have video proof. And for some reason, my interrogator actually let me tape it. I guess she hadn't heard of YouTube back then, and the thing went viral, and I'm glad because it helped save me.
Yeah, we're going to show that right now. Take a look at this.
Riots around the Muslim world, hundreds of people being killed, arson, terrorism. It was news, and so our little magazine wrote a story about it, and to illustrate what the fuss was about, we showed some of the cartoons. Well, as publisher, I became the first person in the free world charged with an offense for publishing those cartoons. Not even the cartoonists themselves were charged, but here in Canada, in the province of Alberta, I was charged with hate speech for showing the news. The videotape that I took of my own interrogation, I uploaded to YouTube, and when people saw what it looks like to be interrogated by the government in 2006, they were shocked.
I think the Danish cartoons was a test for the Western world, and we failed it. We failed it. And in that sense, it is, in its way, although obviously less catastrophic, but in terms of its long-term consequences, it is as significant as 9/11.
That was Mark Stein commenting on the failure of the West regarding these cartoons. Claire, you just heard the interrogation that and saw some of the clip that Ezra went through a few years ago. You spent 20 years retired from the Central Intelligence Agency. Clare Lopez, you took an oath to defend the Constitution of this United States. Sitting there right now in Washington, D.C., you work now at Center for Security Policy, heading up research and analysis, very close to the Power Center just down the street in D.C. When you hear Ezra's story and you look at a friendly nation, Canada, I mean, there are brothers and sisters up there. What goes through your heart, your soul, knowing that you will give your life to defend the U.S. Constitution and seeing these abuses take place?
Well, I mean, it's really chilling. It is absolutely chilling to anyone who treasures individual free speech. And what illustration of is how jihad uses our to impose Sharia on us, our system. We are allowed, we in the United States as well as elsewhere, yes, we are permitting enemy forces of jihad and Sharia to use our system.
Yeah, you're breaking up a little bit. We're getting the gist of it, that we're allowing the forces of Islam, the Sharia issues to undermine everything that we stand for down here. Ezra, where does all of this go for you? What's the next step?
Well, that Human Rights Commission was finally dropped after 900 days, and I was saddled with my legal bills. But as I mentioned, between the two human rights complaints, the variety of defamation suits, the Broadcast Standards Council, our version of the FCC, they're ongoing. As I said last week, I lost one, and I lost an $80,000 ruling. The judge said I was wrong. I believe I need to appeal. That's going to cost me another $30,000. And the thing is, that's part of the punishment. The process is the punishment, just to spend my time and money in court, hiring lawyers to take away from the fight, to take away from my time, and to demoralize me. Now, I'm a stubborn mule, so I don't demoralize easily, but, you know, it does even wear me down. And I don't want to be worn down. I want to maintain my favorite thing about Canada, which is our relative freedom. And I feel it's eroding. And you should be on guard, too, because I say again, you have a strong First Amendment, but it is only as strong as the people willing to interpret it and defend it purely. Do not let it be eroded or whittled down or sanded down. It's up to you to keep the culture of that freedom alive.
Yeah. Now, are there any folks up there in Canada that are standing with you, some of the elected officials or celebrities of any sort, saying, hey, come on, guys, or are you like on an island all of your own?
There are a few people, and of course grassroots individuals, but it is politically difficult to speak against Islamic political correctness. People don't want to be called racist or Islamophobes. And I think in Canada, we have 1 million Muslim immigrants. Most of them are moderate, happy Canadians, but there is an activist side, and so they're starting to have real political clout. And so I'm worried that we may one day reach a political tipping point, as I feel they're about to do in places like the Netherlands or France, where almost to speak out against Sharia law, the creeping Sharia law, is political suicide. And I don't want to get to that point. I want to fight in the first ditch rather than the last ditch. If anyone wants to help me, I say again, you can read the whole court case. Maybe you agree with the judge. Maybe you think I'm wrong. But you can read it for yourself at my website, standwithezra.com. And if you want to help me with my legal bills, I'd be very grateful if you would.
Yeah, and folks, at 32 minutes after 4 o'clock on December 4th, Thursday, Tom Trento, your host here, Enemies of the State. We deal with all these issues that are enemies of the state, the United States of America, and our constitutional basis, our Judeo-Christian worldview. Our subject today is free speech in the West. We're looking specifically at Ann Fishman's film, Silent Conquest. That's what you see behind me. An expose on the efforts, in particular by the Islamic Ummah, the Islamic world, focused out of the OIC, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, 56 Islamic nations. A few years back in Istanbul, coming up with a policy saying, you know, we all got to calm down a little bit and not talk about religions, particularly Islam. And Hillary Clinton at that point said, well, we have a First Amendment, but there's ways that we can help you implement your Istanbul process. We'll get into that with Claire for a moment. But Ezra, we know you got to go soon. What help specifically besides financial help, which we hope standwithezra.com folks can go and donate? What other kind of help do you need that maybe our viewers or listeners here concerned about these issues can provide?
Well, I think people need to stand on guard in the United States. So raise the alarm, learn about it. I think that Canada may be 5 years down the road for you, and Britain may be 10 years down the road, and the Netherlands may be 15 years down the road. So if you want a glimpse of your future with creeping Sharia law and people afraid to speak out against radical Islam, look to Canada and gird yourself and realize your best defense is an adherence to your First Amendment, and your second best defense is to make sure that if people immigrate to the United States, they come to embrace American values, not to import Saudi values or Iranian values.
Amen, amen. Claire, any final thoughts or questions or ideas for Ezra?
Well, I just think that you're absolutely right about defending our rules.
No, you're breaking up pretty badly. We're going to have to sort that out. So, yeah, you're breaking up pretty badly, Claire. We're going to have to figure that out here. But in any event, at 35 minutes, Ezra, thank you very, very much. We want to check in with you every couple of weeks or so, see how things are going. And I appreciate the battle you're in. Whatever we can do to help, we will. And you got a friend down here. You got a lot of friends down here. We follow your work. You're doing phenomenal work. Your talk show, your legal work, all of that. Stand strong. You're fighting for the truth, so things will sort out properly.
Thank you very much, my friend. Goodbye, everybody.
All right, you take care. Ezra Levant, folks, up in Ontario and Toronto. He's in Toronto, right?
Yes.
Now? Yeah. And
let me work on the Claire thing. And
you guys work on the Claire thing. And what I'd like to do is show the 2-minute, if we can show the 2-minute trailer for Silent Conquest to get a gist of this. Then we'll dive into some of the particulars. We're going to be showing these cartoons to you. We're not afraid to show you the cartoons. It's ridiculous that people have died over these little cartoons. But again, the issue at stake is very similar to Ferguson. We've been doing a lot of work on the Ferguson issue. And the argument we've made on Ferguson, notwithstanding whether or not Ferguson is Mississippi 1960, we'll grant it is when in fact we know it isn't. But let's just, for the sake of the discussion, say that Ferguson, Missouri is similar to Mississippi or Selma, Alabama, you know, in their late 50s, early 60s, just a totally racist, horrible place to be. That's one issue. But that had nothing to do with what occurred on 9th August 2014 when a young man, a very large young man, Michael Brown, 6'5", 289 pounds, made at least 5 specific volitional decisions and was the master of his own destiny at each of those points. He said at one point, I can go into a convenience store and steal cigars because I want to roll them into big joints with marijuana. I can do that and I don't have to pay for those. That's a decision that Michael Brown made. If he didn't make that decision, if he exhibited personal responsibility at that point, no one would even know about Michael Brown. At the second decision he made, and I'm going to tie this together with free speech in this country because you're seeing the suppression of free speech, even for us to speak this way about Michael Brown, that the issue is personal responsibility, not racism, we're being called racists. Well, the fact of the matter is Michael Brown then started to walk out of the store. He was confronted by a very small little convenience store proprietor who said, you can't do that. Michael Brown swats him away. The convenience store guy said, please, please. And Michael Brown starts to charge him. 2 more volitional decisions, making him a master of his own destiny. And his destiny, just a few minutes later, would be his demise. If he exhibited personal responsibility. Now, ought we pass laws here that say when someone is stealing something from a store, that it's not the proprietor's right or the police officer's right to intervene? That the obligation is upon the other and not the individual who's going to exhibit the bad behavior. Same thing with these free speech issues. If it's the Islamic world or the Hindu world or the Christian world or the Jewish world that doesn't like what you're going to say, should we make a law that says it can't be said because you're going to offend Jewish people or Christians? Think about that. Do we have that?
Yes.
Take a look at the 2-minute trailer for Silent Conquest. It'll give you a feel of where we're going with our show today at 40 minutes past 4 o'clock on December 4.
There is no freedom of speech under Sharia law. Criticizing any aspects of Islam or Muhammad or the religion itself is a death penalty.
Whoever insults Islam or insults the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam deserves capital punishment.
And this from Cairo, Egypt now. We're learning a prosecutor in that country has issued an arrest warrant for several people here in the U.S.
The 7 men and 1 woman face charges of, quote, insulting the Islamic religion. All of the accused could face the death penalty if convicted.
The future must not belong to those who slander the Prophet of Islam.
One day you will conquer the White House.
There are 2 civil wars taking place. One is between Muslims over the nature of Islam or what it means to be a Muslim. And there's another over Westerners, whether what we have is something worth defending and indeed fighting for, or whether you just shrug and say it's an accident of history and we can move on from there.
So if there is a new international norm created that says you can't criticize Islam, then all of the practices of Islam itself or the effects by their nature are also going to be protected from criticism.
Where's this going to end?
The logical development of this trend would be that we end up in some kind of tyranny of silence.
It's always in a democracy.
Tyranny of silence.
The only response.
What an amazing concept. The tyranny of silence. Thus the name of Ann Fishman's phenomenal documentary, Silent Conquest.
No, it's amazing. It really is. And, you know, you just can't put into words how much this actually means, because we're so used to having the freedom of speech and the freedom of religion and all this.
We take it for granted.
We take it for granted.
We really
and
do.
Also our women's rights. We take it for granted, our women's rights here. And a lot of these countries do not have it the way we have it as far as freedom of speech. We can pretty much say or do anything as long as it isn't called, you know.
Well, you can't say theater in a crowded fire, Mark. You know
well,
that.
you can if the theater's on fire.
You can't say theater in a crowded fire.
You can say, but you can't say fire in a crowded theater when there is a fire.
When there is a fire, yeah, that's right. All right, folks, at 42 minutes after 4 o'clock, December 4, Thursday, Tom Trento, your host here on WSBR Radio, 740 AM. We just had Ezra Levant from Toronto. Ezra's situation is illustrating the core issue today, that the free speech that we have enjoyed for 236 years in the United States of America, the free speech that we enjoy is being eroded ever so quickly. And you know what? It's not being eroded by people who adopt to a conservative view of life, people on the right. The Tea Party community is not saying, hey, people shouldn't be allowed to express their thoughts on everything. The Tea Party community is abused by so many people.
Yes, they are. In
the media, everywhere else. Cartoons written about them, cartoons and stuff written about me, about us here at the United West. It's not coming from there. The threat is coming from the left, the leftists that can't argue effectively in the marketplace, can't win the battle of ideas. And it's coming from the Islamic community that doesn't want to fight the battle of ideas because they have one idea, Islam. That's where it's coming from. Claire, you were in Silent Conquest, and what was the main point that you brought out in your part in Silent Conquest?
Claire
Lopez.
We had her. Just dropped off again.
Washington, D.C., folks.
Must be the snow going on.
It must be the NSA dealing with her. Yeah. Let me lay out the background of the Danish cartoons. And you're seeing those pictures as we talk, and we're going to show them. And really, if you look at them, you're going to go, what the heck was all this about? Not only was this a serious problem, showing these cartoons, but I got to tell you, they were printed in, I think, 2005 or 2006. And for 2 or 3 years, they were out public, but nobody cared. It wasn't until a group of imams started traveling around the world inciting anger in Islamic communities toward the fact that these cartoons existed. As I said earlier, Islam has an iconic doctrine in their theology, no images. Well, this was the image of Muhammad that was being drawn in the interpretation of the various artists. And as Claire said earlier, great, any religion can have anything they want, but that ought not interfere with free speech here in the United States. She's here. Yeah. Claire, you were in Silent Conquest as a subject matter expert. What was your main point? What were you trying to get across in the movie? Because we can't show the whole movie right now, but what was your main point?
Right. Well, I think the most important thing is really the theme of this whole show, and that is that free speech is the bulwark of a free people. And we are lucky enough here in the United States to have, as part of our Constitution, part of our Bill of Rights, the First Amendment, that defends that principle of free speech. Because without free speech, there is no free anything else. And so that is first. That is the most important thing. And it is under assault here in the United States. And as we were saying earlier, it is the very sophisticated strategy of the Islamic Jihad and Sharia enemy to use our own system against us, to infiltrate inside of that system through academia, through media, certainly in the government, the workplace, to use our own system and courts legally against us, and certainly, as we can see with Ezra up in Canada, using that legal system against him. And Canada has a constitution, but it doesn't have a First Amendment.
Unbelievable. Hey, what is this, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation? Tell our viewers, tell our viewers what that's all about, and the resolution they came up with, 2010, I think, Resolution 1516. Explain that and how that.
1618.
What is 1618? 1618.
Yes,
16/18.
So,
go ahead.
The OIC is a 57-member international organization at the head of state level of all 56 Islamic countries in the world, plus 57 makes the Palestinians make 57 members. And it is convened at the head of state level. It is the largest organization next to the United Nations. It's the largest organization with status at the United Nations. And when they vote as a bloc. And part of the agenda of the OIC, which anyone can see online at its website, it's in English, French, Arabic, whatever you like. Part of its agenda is something under a 10-year plan that was put forth in 2005, so we're nearly to the end of that. The top agenda item of this 10-year period, if you will, has been the criminalization of the criticism of Islam. Now, the term Islamophobia was made up by one of the Muslim Brotherhood groups in the United States, the International Institute of Islamic Thought, or IIIT, but it's become the mantra of the OIC, certainly. And the attempt by the OIC is especially directed at the United States because we have a First Amendment. There's no other place in Europe or Canada or anywhere else where the freedom of speech, the freedom to offend, is what that is about. You wouldn't need a law or an amendment to protect speech that everybody agreed with.
Sure.
You need that defense to protect against speech that is considered offensive by whomever or some. And so, because nobody else has that, but we do, we in the United States have been the #1 target of the OIC, which has worked very closely with our own Department of State. And especially the former Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, was at the forefront of this effort. She worked closely with the then OIC Secretary General, the Turkish Secretary General, Ekmelettin Ihsanoglu. They have a new Secretary General as of this year. He is a Saudi. But this process goes on, what is called the Istanbul process, named after one of the first venues where this group got together to discuss this issue. They are also using the UN process itself, and especially the United Nations Commission on Human Rights. And within that department, agency of the United Nations, they passed something called Resolution 1618. And that resolution states as its objective that all criticism of religion should be forbidden by law, not just by the member states of the OIC, but that it should be urged upon the legal systems of every other place on earth.
Unbelievable.
That may not be a member even of the OIC.
Now here, watch this, folks. At 50 minutes after 4 o'clock on December 4th here, we have a meeting coming out of Istanbul where essentially, and I'm simplifying this, we don't want the world to criticize Islam. We don't want mockery. We don't want any sort of parody. That offends 1.3 billion people in the world. There has to be a law against that. And Hillary Clinton tried to buy into that to some extent. This is
Most
2010.
Right.
2010.
11, I think.
Claire, well, initiated in 2010. Right. 2012, September 11th, something happened in Libya that illustrates this, that hits the nail on the head, and you're in the middle of that whole committee. Tell us about what happened in Libya on 2012, September 11th, and how free speech that we're talking about, Clare Lopez, got affected on that day.
Exactly. Well, I'm a member of something called the Citizens Commission on Benghazi. And for anyone who wants to look at that, go to the website aim.org, AIM.org, and look for the tab for the CCB. We formed up last year to hold accountable not just the media, but the government on getting to the bottom of what happened before, during, and after Benghazi. Now, the after part is what we're looking at here, and that is that, I don't know how many people know this, but at 10 o'clock at night, Eastern U.S. time, while our people over in Benghazi were still fighting and eventually dying alone with not one single finger of official U.S. response lifted to help them during that time, at 10 o'clock at night, from what we are told, Hillary Clinton, then Secretary of State, was on the telephone with our President Barack Obama. Within about 10 minutes after that, the Department of State issued its very first press release about the attack on our mission in Benghazi, and it referenced as a cause the video, the YouTube video called Innocence of Muslims, which is a very short, actually not a trailer for a film, not even the whole film, but a trailer to the film. It is about the life of Muhammad. It contains vignettes straight out of the biography of Muhammad and the hadiths, but it's very low budget. And because it's so accurate about the life of Muhammad, it caused great offense. Truth, by the way, can be an offense in Islam.
Very much so.
And the State Department used this video as an excuse for why our mission was attacked. Now, the truth is that our embassy in Cairo, Egypt, next door, in Tunis, Tunisia, next door, the other side, and in many places around the world, those places were attacked with demonstrations, very violent ones, over this video. But in Libya, there were zero demonstrations, zero protests about this video, and our mission, our Department of State, our White House, our Pentagon, and the intelligence community all knew that it was a terrorist attack by militias affiliated with Al-Qaeda, Ansar al-Sharia. They knew that within the first 15 minutes. But they used this narrative that the video was to blame, and it fell straight into the pattern of the agenda, not just of the OIC, but unfortunately our own government, Secretary of State Clinton and the Department of State, to criminalize criticism of Islam once again. And so for the next 2 weeks, following September 11, 2012, and on into the United Nations General Assembly meeting at the end of that month, it always happens the last 24, 25 September, all the heads of state are there, all of the OIC heads of state are there, and between the attack and that meeting, there was a drumbeat of criticism of free speech, demands that free speech had to be curtailed. Why? Because Muslims just could not be expected to exhibit personal responsibility and refrain from violence if they were upset. And therefore, and here it gets to where we're going with this, the test of consequences. So even if a piece of speech, a film, or anything else does not explicitly call for violence or incite to violence per se, if anyone on earth, anywhere, after the fact even, decides that they're offended by that image, that speech, then they have the right to resort to violence,
whatever, yeah.
Because they're offended, and therefore, who should be held to blame? Not just the perpetrators, or not even the perpetrators of the violence itself, but the person responsible for the speech or the film. And that's where this film, Innocence of Muslims, came in to all this criticism. Stop the film, stop the offense against Islam, and the violence will stop. Well, no, of course it won't stop, but that's what they're saying.
Hey, Claire, right now we're showing
who went to jail.
Yeah, we're showing pictures.
Went to jail.
We're showing pictures of the filmmaker, and I think it was Woods, Mr. Woods. His son was killed at Benghazi. Hillary came up to him and told him something. You remember that?
I do exactly. It was at the funeral service for the slain members, our people in Benghazi, including 2 members of the Annex, the CIA Base of Operations security team. Tyrone Woods was one of those. His father, Charles Woods, at the ceremony. Secretary State Clinton comes over to him and says, we're going to get the guy who made that film. I'm paraphrasing a little bit here, but we're going to arrest him and put him in jail. And indeed, that's exactly what they did. And why? Because it fit the narrative that free speech had to be curtailed. This exactly kowtows directly into Islamic law on slander, which says that anything that offends a Muslim is slander and can be a capital offense.
Unbelievable. And ladies and gentlemen, that's our big idea for today. We only got a couple of minutes left. The guys are chomping at the bit. They got questions for you, Claire. But I want everybody to understand at 56 minutes after 4 o'clock, we're discussing Silent Conquest. You can Google it. You can get it on iTunes, on Amazon. You need to watch this movie. Claire was one of the subject matter experts in it. We had Ezra Levant on earlier, his situation up in Canada. Benghazi, which has its own set of issues that we're dealing with on national security, also has a significant free speech component to it. Not only did Hillary Clinton hold true to her promise to Mr. Charles Woods that she'd get the producer of the film, who is, I think, still in jail, but folks, this is an affront against every American and every person who speaks freely. Mark, you had a question for Claire?
Yeah, well, two things, Claire. One,
we got about 2 minutes.
Yeah. The first question is, I know the Center for Security Policy has been doing some fantastic research on the dissemination of this information. And I think that's highly critical for people to realize that this is just not some airy-fairy UN organization sitting out there, the OIC, just willy-nilly just making edicts. These actually get perpetrated down all the way through to the activists on the ground. Is that not true? Is that what's not the investigation?
Absolutely true. Because this organization is head of state, it means that the decisions taken by the OIC are implemented by all the Muslim countries in the world. And again, we're talking about a population of 1.6 billion or so Muslims around the world. The OIC purports and puts itself out there to be the representative of the global Muslim Ummah, community of Muslims worldwide, and that's the way it takes decisions, and those decisions are acted upon.
Wow.
And
real quickly, Mark, we'll wrap it up here, sadly.
And
we can talk all day about this stuff.
Yeah, but this really does affect us on the ground, even to the point of anything that we say here, even locally, we get hit with lawsuits, or the CARE, Council of American Islamic Relations, gets involved and makes threats all the time. And this is the intimidation that the people feel throughout the country and throughout Canada and the world. And with the UAE designation, it kind of puts a stamp, a seal of approval that what we are saying is right. Is that not correct, Claire?
It's absolutely true, and Ezra Levant is the example of that currently. How Western systems, a free country, a Western democratic style government with a constitution like Canada, could be doing this to a guy like Ezra Levant, is a dire warning to the rest of us that we give in on free speech and we are finished as a civilization.
We really are, and we're finished with our show.
Abadan, real quick on Abadan, just give us anything with Hillary and the Benghazi update.
We can't do that right now. We got 20 seconds left.
All right, she got 10 seconds.
Go to AIM.org and look for Citizens Commission on Benghazi. You will find our most recent writing and reports about Benghazi there.
Excellent. Clare Lopez, Center for Security Policy, Vice President in charge of research and analysis, and a whole bunch of other things, but not in charge of technical phone stuff.
I wish.
We got to get somebody there to work on your phone skills, your phone communication skills. Claire was not at the Langley at the farm when they had that class.
No, she's
on Skype communication.
Skype communication.
Now, if you want your phone bugged,
different story.
That's a different story. Right?
All right, free speech, folks. It ain't free. You got to work for it every day. We're here working for you every day. We'll see you tomorrow. Jumpin' Juma Freaky Friday. Bye, Clare Lopez. Take care, everybody.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks, Claire.